to this new live interview at Discord session that we are hosting over here on the Canadian STEM Youth server. Welcome, welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks for asking. Well, thank you for being our second guest on this new interview format. We've got lots to talk about, lots of STEM chat to be had, exploring your life on the farm, regenerative farming, studying at Dalhousie, animal and plant sciences, lots and lots to talk about. So, to kick us off, Science Fair projects brought us together. Do you want to talk a little bit about your first Science Fair project, if you remember?
Sure, yeah. So I started doing science fair in grade seven. But my first year I was only the alternate for the fair, and then my second year was my first time I got to go.
Hmm.
Um, I had a project on chicken behavior, so I was looking at two different breeds of chickens, and how they behaved, and then I collected all their eggs, and I analyzed the eggs for yolk color and albumin height, and a bunch of other characteristics. And then I was comparing the behavior to the yolk color ended up being most important. It was kind of cool. It was fun.
So, your color is more important in determining behavior, hey? That's
Well,
not what I expected.
behavior determines yolk color, but
Sure.
because I was looking at foraging behavior and what they were foraging, and how frequently they were eating grass as compared to like just eating grain or perching and stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah. And the red chickens, they were more, I don't know, foraging aligned. And then the second year that I did, I used the same flock, and the white chickens learned how to forage more in the second year. So that was cool.
Oh, that is cool. And I mean, grade seven, already doing projects on chickens and animals. Clearly, this has been something that you've been passionate about for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know where it comes from, growing up on a farm, but do you want to talk a little bit about what that upbringing was like?
Yeah, sure. So my father's actually a researcher for Agriculture Canada. So he researches grazing methods, and grazing management with cattle, especially. So I've always kind of had like a science upbringing on the farm, because my father always tried to emphasize to me how much science connects to what we do in farming. Um, and everything that we do in farming has to do with experimentation. Even if it's something that you've learned from somewhere, you don't know if it's going to work for you. So you're always kind of experimenting and adjusting based on your results. And yeah, I think farming itself is just a science, you know?
Hmm. So now you're studying animal and plant sciences at Dalhousie. How's that
Yes.
whole going? How's the whole situation going? You're learning lots?
Yeah, it's a really interesting program that I'm in. I'm in the double major because I just couldn't decide if I liked animals or plants more. um, but yeah, I've taken some super cool courses. Like I took entomology this year. I've
Nice.
taken domestic animal behavior. Um, some interesting things like meat science, a little bit off the wall. Yeah, it's a really cool course, and we've got an on-campus farm where we can work and do research, and do hands-on stuff. So that's amazing too.
Cool. And so at the end of an animal and plant sciences degree, what's the typical career path look like? What are people wanting to move into? Is it just all farmers wanting to get a bit more scientific?
Some of it is. Some of it is people who are just wanting to go back into farming. Some people want to go into research. That's the course that I've always considered taking. Although I do want to go into research and also go back to the farm, so I'm not quite sure um, what timeline I'm going to have for going on to take my master's, but that is the plan in the future.
Nice. Okay. So research or farm, that's a tough decision to come up.
It's both. That's the
Well,
plan.
yeah, exactly. Nice. I love that. I mean, even with Katie last interview, again, another person who just couldn't decide, so decided to do both. Why not? If you've got the
Exactly.
options, take both. Um, so who are most of the people that you're studying with? Like, is everyone coming off a farming background? Are there lots of people that have never done it before?
Yeah, I have four roommates who are all in animal science or landscape architecture, which is a plant science sort of degree. And none of them come from a farming background. Most of them are from cities. And yet they're here studying at the AC, studying agriculture. It's pretty cool. Um,
Mhm.
I'd say there's almost as many people from cities at my school as there are people from farms.
Nice. Okay. I love to see
Yeah.
it. I love to see city folk getting involved in the farming agricultural world.
Yeah.
Is there something that your roommates have discussed with you? I imagine you have lots and lots of chats about life and work and study and stuff. Is there something that they're learning that is probably the most unexpected? Something they they didn't know was going to be part of the course?
I think it's interesting for them when we do like the hands-on sides of things. A lot of them want to go a vet stream, so that's like really, really useful to them because you need animal experience to start your vet science degree.
Hmm.
Um, so I think sometimes they're a little bit, shocked when they have to put their hand inside a cow, um, and
Yep.
stuff like that. But it's also really important for them to learn it, so it's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's very much a hands-on career that they're getting themselves into. So
Yeah.
get comfortable being dirty up front. Um, yeah, for sure. Is there something that you're learning that you didn't expect to learn?
Honestly, the coolest thing for me is the stuff I'm learning in my plant science degree right now.
Hmm.
My father took animal science, and that's something that he knows a lot about, and he's always tried to teach me a lot about, but he doesn't have the plant science background, so it's a lot of stuff that I'm not as familiar with. So that's really cool.
Nice. I mean, I can see here that Johan and Athorn in the Discord chat have some connections to AAFC as well, which is pretty cool. I mean, what a small world, absolutely.
Cool.
Johan has a sweet question for you, and that is research and farm work seem significantly different. So, what of each thing appeals to you?
I wouldn't say that they're significantly different, to be honest.
And,
Um,
and the answer to that. Sorry, Johan. Bye.
I mean, like when I'm on the farm, for example, I do pasture management for our cattle through the summer. So we have a herd of about 50 head that I manage on my own. And when I move them every day, I'm analyzing what time I should move them, how frequently I should move them. I'm looking at the grass, the soil, the gain of the animals to make these decisions. And that actually influenced several of my science fair projects, which were specifically on grazing rotations. And I feel like a lot of that is experimentation. It's doing the same things over and over again to see how your results come out. You're really following a lot of the scientific method when you're making farm management decisions.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, it's a very hands-on career, right? So, as you're doing farm work, it is very experimental in nature. As much as my farming parents might want to disagree and blame luck, and probably more than they should. Always seems to be too much rain or too little rain. Seems to be the driving factor.
You can always prepare your farm for whatever is going to happen, and good management can get you through those things.
Absolutely. Very funny question from Katie in the chat, and completely up to you as to how much you want to answer it. But she does ask, in what context does one find oneself with a hand inside a cow, coming from a city kid, she says.
There are several contexts.
Hmm.
Um,
Depends
so
what gen, Katie.
Um, so a cool thing that we do here at the AC is we have a lot of cannulated cows for research, which means there's basically a hole in the rumen, and it's plugged. But then you can open it up and you can put things in it and take things out to see what's going on with their diet or to test different diets on them. So sometimes you can have your hand right in the cannulated cow in the rumen. But then in other cases, if you're preg checking a cow, that is not where you're putting your hand
Nope.
at all.
Also, just like dental work, or lots of mouth
Yeah,
issues and
yeah,
stuff. Yeah,
mouth as well. Yeah.
yep, yep. Quite a few, quite a few different ways. Funny. Um, so let's talk about your farm a little bit more. So you raise beef, sheep, poultry, and pigs. That's
Yes.
covering up a lot of different animals. Uh,
Yeah.
how well do they all live and work together?
Yeah, sure. So we've got about 500 acres, and we're in Nova Scotia, so we've got a lot of variable weather. Um, so we found it easiest to work with a lot of different species and follow a Salatin style of farming. I don't know if you've heard of Joel Salatin.
No,
He's one of the like I don't know influencers of regenerative agriculture,
love
in
that.
that he's designed ways of moving your animals with different species to basically use your pasture to the best of its ability and to restore soil health as best you can.
Mhm.
So, for example, when you put the cattle on the pasture and then you follow it with chickens, then the chickens are able to destroy some of the parasite issues that would have
Mhm.
happened before. So then you can put cattle on again quicker. Um, or there's also things like putting pigs in the woods, where they can root things up and help us make a silvopasture. Every different species that we work with has its own purpose, not just for like our own revenue or for having a specific type of meat to market, but also because they're doing something for the land, you know?
Mhm. He's not the guy that did a TED talk on the regenerative properties of cattle on in deserts and stopping desertification. Is that him?
Yes.
Oh, right.
No,
Okay.
that's
Oh,
that's
okay.
not that's Alan Savory.
Oh, okay.
But
Different
he's
influencer. Got it.
different influencer, but very connected. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Great TED talk if anyone is interested. Yeah, just look up cattle use in in stopping desertification. Fascinating video to watch, and just
Super
see the
cool.
impact that just bringing back some of the like some of these animals to the landscape can actually have. Um, Johan has a fantastic question. He says more philosophical, so hopefully this one works out. In many scientific fields, there is often a disconnect between scientists and the people who directly benefit from it. So, for example, medical students and patients. Do you find that the same is real in agriculture and farming? And if so, what is your opinion on resolving this disconnect?
Disconnect between farmers and researchers,
Mm,
or because consumers and researchers, there's absolutely a disconnect.
absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that's pretty obvious. With farmers, I really think it depends on the community that you're in.
Hmm.
Because I run in the organic regenerative circles in farming. So a lot of people have a really huge appreciation for research and for environmentalism, and science in general. But then in some of the other more conventional fields, sometimes you don't get that same, I don't know, appreciation for everything that's going on, and it's more just about profit, I guess. So if the science says that this is going to make me earn more, then I'm going to do it. But if there's other benefits, I might not. That's sometimes, not always, but sometimes the mentality that people have.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it is very challenging, especially with farmers, because farming is not a career that you do from 9 to 5. It's literally your entire being. It's your entire identity. So, quite often, farmers, I don't want to say stuck in their ways, but they know a certain way of doing things and they like to stick with it over generations because that's worked for them previously. And so there is a challenge in proper scientific communication between researchers to say that like current research is now suggesting maybe this is more effective than something you've been doing before. And it's about communicating that in such a way that it doesn't challenge their sense of identity, but also then informs them in something might have changed since when they first learned that information.
Yeah, yeah, and especially looking at like the demographics of farmers in Canada, it's a lot of people who have been farming for a very long time. So sometimes it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this
Yeah.
isn't just unique to farming either. It's a challenge of science communication at the best of times is how do you present new information to people who think they know the answer already? And especially when the information is now new. And I mean, we saw that with COVID happen all the time. You present one piece of information and then scientists get updated information or updated research a few months later, and then all of a sudden you're challenging the perceptions that people have already of the world around them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think a good parallel to that is sometimes pesticides in agriculture,
Hmm.
because that's something that was heavily marketed, back in the 50s as like the future of agriculture, and the progressive thing to do. And a lot of these farmers started back then. So they don't want to hear that now it's probably not the best option, you know?
Yeah, it's the same with any of those chemicals. So many farmers rely so heavily on chemicals, and now,
Yeah.
the general perception is almost trying to swing the other way, where it's like, well, let's get rid of as many chemicals and start trying to use more biological and natural ways of dealing with the challenges that you're facing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's the way we should be going. So, I
Nice.
hope to see it grow more.
Grow more, pun intended. Love it.
Yes, yes.
Katie has a follow-up question, which is, how important do you think science communication is in agriculture? Do you think things like social media are helpful for people to learn more about where their food comes from and how it can be sustainable? Should we have more agricultural influencers?
Absolutely. So that's something that I would like to be able to do in the future with my career. Our farm, we do a lot of, I don't know, tours and some interviews and stuff. But I would like to make more of a focus on our farm, having people come and learn about agriculture, about sustainability, be able to teach classes there, have like community-based agriculture. Stuff like that is the dream for the future of our farm, yeah.
Nice, right. I mean, you should become a streamer. Like, give a thumbs up in the chat if you think Ray should become a streamer, agricultural influencer. I want to see it. I want to see that in your future. I mean, that's certainly a good way of mixing farming and research while also still bringing about that huge scientific communication. That is just so important, especially for something that traditionally has been so separated. As you say, there's a very clear disconnect between farming and consumers. So we definitely need to
Yeah.
like narrow that gap and make it so there's less of those embarrassing posts you see on Facebook where it's like 50 embarrassing tweets, related to where food comes from or something. And it's like, oh, I didn't even know beef was a real animal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we got to change that up. Or, chocolate milk comes from brown cows. I love that one. So
It's a
funny.
classic. It's a classic.
Classic. Classics are great. Fawn has a specific question about cows. Not off topic at all, but is it true that cows actually have four stomachs? And is it more to separate compartments within the main stomach, such as the rumen reticulum, and the other two that he doesn't know and I don't know either?
Omasum and abomasum are the other two. Yeah, so there are four compartments, but they're referred to as four stomachs. Like they're all connected. Um, because it's a digestive system. But the reticulum is kind of like a storage. It's like where you'd put the cud and everything before it goes back through the rumen. And the rumen is a fermentation vat because cattle digest things by fermenting. And then the abomasum and the omasum function more the way a monogastric stomach would work, breaking down proteins and fats that way.
So are they in line? Does food go from one to the next one, or are they all sort of work in parallel, or is it sort of a mixed bag where it goes in one and then comes back out and then goes in another one? Then
So yeah, it goes in, and then it goes to the rumen, and then no, it goes to the reticulum, and then the cow chews its cud, and then it carries on to the rumen, and yeah, I don't know why I'm like struggling with this question. It's such a basic question, but yeah, they're connected. And it carries on and it ends through the abomasum and the omasum.
yeah, you say it's basic, but I've had my hand inside of a cow and I've never understood how the stomachs work. And I guess my look, yeah, I'm a curious guy, but my main question was why is my hand inside this cow and not like I wonder how the stomach works. But maybe I should be asking both questions. Always ask why.
Fair enough, fair enough. Yeah.
Okay, so then changing track just a little bit. You say that your long-term plan is to work in the regenerative field with research, also combining in farming and community-based science. Do you want to talk a little bit more about like what does community-based science look like to you? What is sustainable ag outreach?
Yeah, sure. So for community-based farming, I mean, there's lots of different ways, or community-based research. There's lots of different ways to make that happen. They're really easy things to set up, like bio blitzes and stuff, that I'll be able to do on my farm this summer, where people can come and they can go out and take photos of things that they see, and then we can make an ecology analysis on the biodiversity of our farm. And that's just having people from the community come in and do some of the field work for us, But then there's other ways that would be cool to make this happen, with having like a garden plot where people can go and we can control things so that they can perform, experiments that they want to do with vegetables or whatever. Or being able to have people come and make animal behavior observations for us. Or we can have a live cam set up for behavior observations, and then people from around the world can watch and make those observations for us, Lots of different ways to, I don't know, involve the community in research, both to make it more possible for us to meet our goals that way, because sometimes, one person can't do all of these hours of watching things or taking pictures of things and finding things. It's a lot. So it makes things more possible, but it also helps to expose people to agricultural research, and we can teach them about why we're doing what we do at the same time. And then for sustainable agriculture research, not research, outreach, I think, that comes in a lot of different ways. I think even when I'm doing my stand at the farmers market and talking to customers, that's research outreach about sustainable ag, because I'm telling them why we do what we do. I think social media is a huge part of that right now. Obviously, that helps us reach a much wider audience. And that's, a lot of people aren't going outside, even as the mask mandate is lifted. A lot of people are still not going to be venturing out to the farmers market, but I can still talk to them on a video on Discord at home,
Yeah, get outside and touch grass. It's so important.
Yeah.
Um, what about citizen science? Do you see that playing a huge role in agriculture going forward? Do you think there should be more, just like everyday farmers getting more involved in scientific research, even if it is just as a citizen scientist?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's super important for a lot of the base research before you go into doing your really controlled experiments. Sometimes being able to interview farmers around you, look at people who have something similar set up, and being able to get, a lot more replication that way, just to start out to see what things we need to change and how we should set things up. And I think there are a lot of farmers who actually are pretty eager to do that, because this is their passion. They love to talk about their jobs. So if you want to approach somebody and say, hey, can you give me a bit of a tour? Can I take some soil samples? And then we can talk about why you're doing it this way. You can really use that to build your experimental setup that way,
Someone is wanting to do a science fair project related to agriculture to some extent. Do you have any advice on, is there some way that they should be approaching farmers? Is there like a citizen science app or website or something they should be looking at for research, like for preliminary research to give them ideas?
I think a big thing to do would be to approach your local agricultural science organization. We've got Perennia here in Nova Scotia,
Hmm.
but I'm pretty sure there's equivalents throughout the country. And they work specifically with farmers, and do science outreach to farmers and presenting research in ways that's easy for farmers to implement. But they would also probably be very excited to see a young person come and want to learn more about agricultural science. And if you can't find someone like that, even your provincial agriculture, um, there's normally an extension person in the agriculture department for every province. So they would be a great person to find and reach out to as well.
For sure. And then if it's a bit more specifically about fruit and veg, even just going around your local farmers market and asking questions, asking the people there representing some of the local farms if they'd be interested in following up or getting a business card or some sort of just like make that initial connection and then build from there.
Yeah.
For sure. And then what is if someone wanted to get into animal and plant sciences as a career? Like, studying like you did at Dalhousie, is there some sort of like subjects, or is there something they should be doing in high school now that they should be preparing for in the future?
So when I went through high school, I basically took all of the sciences.
Hmm.
Like you do have to take biology and chemistry and physics, and calculus to go into this degree. Um,
Oh, you need all of
I
them.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, I went to a very small high school, so we didn't have as many course choices. So I'm not entirely sure how that would work in places where you have like IB and AP and that sort of thing.
Hmm.
Because I think those credits work a bit differently.
Yeah.
But for me, I just took all the sciences that I could.
Hmm. Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you find there was much of a disconnect between high school sciences and then going into something a bit more specialized like animal and plant sciences?
Well, actually, your first year is a really great transition year for the degree because you're going into basically general sciences to start. You have a
Hmm.
few electives that you can choose that are more agriculture based, and your labs might be more agriculture based, but you're learning the same thing that anybody who's taking a biological science degree would be learning. And a lot of it's going to overlap a lot from your grade 12 subject matter. So it's pretty easy to get used to the university experience while learning these things.
Nice. I love that. I love when university degrees are set up in such a way that you can actually transition from high school studying and high school processes and knowledge into what they expect you to just like know at university. Um,
Yeah.
so I really love that. I really love that. I'm also a massive proponent of just doing like a general sciences like first year if you can for something, even if it's not related to animal and plant sciences, but just doing a general science for the first year so then you can figure out, oh, okay, now that we're in a university context, where does my interest actually lie now that we're a bit more expanded beyond just the typical physics, biology, chemistry, that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a lot of people who went through their first year here and then ended up changing their major to something completely different.
Hmm.
Some people discovered they really liked aquaculture. They came here for a vet degree and now they're learning about aquacultural science, like just things they weren't exposed to, right?
Do you have any advice on how to choose a university? Like what university to actually go to?
So I chose my university mostly because I wanted to be close to the farm and it's about an hour away from the farm. So
Nice.
I wouldn't say I put like an excessive amount of thought into that. But I do think that if you can tour campuses and get a feel for how you like, I don't know, it's terrible to say, but like the vibes of the campus. I think that's really important because I
Mhm.
think sometimes you can go to a place where you'll be living for most of the year. And if you absolutely hate it, then that's really going to make it harder for you to learn. Yeah, and I would also encourage people to really branch out. Like if you don't have anything tying you close to home, and you have the option to go far away, you might learn stuff completely different to what you've been exposed to before, and that's really good.
Mhm.
I have friends from Ontario, I have friends from Alberta, from BC who come here to Dal to do agricultural science, and they say they've learned like a lot of things that they just never were exposed to in their home provinces.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Canada is a big country, and clearly the West Coast is very, very different from the East Coast. So,
Yeah.
yeah, variety is the spice of life, as they as they say. And it's always better to get different perspectives because it does open your mind up to just so many different things. It's hard to know what you don't know. So, opening yourself up to people that have lived a different experience to you is the way of understanding what you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, talk to me about your work mentoring for science fair. How is that work? How much joy does that bring to your life? What does that look like to you?
That's something it's been really fun for me to do that, to work with kids from my old high school, especially because coming from my high school, we through the time that I was in high school, we really like improved our science fair program so much from when it started. And it's just so cool to see the community of like the
Hmm.
teachers and the students, and then the community members who come to help everybody out. It's really cool to see that grow. Um, but yeah, these past couple of years, my school hasn't participated because of COVID, which has been sad. But in the past, I've worked with people who've gone to Canada wide. I've had some people who were looking at things that were more agricultural, so I've worked with them on like experimental setup. And then other people, they're doing things that I don't really know that much about, so I'm learning as much as they are. And I'm really just helping them with like how to write a report and how to do their stats and that sort of thing. Um, and then I always do a bit of a talk with the students when they start their science fair, and then a few times just to help the whole class learn about, first of all, what they want to do, but also why we want to do this and how great of an experience it is.
Nice. So it seems like maybe we should be getting you to do some future mentoring sessions on Discord. It just
Sure, sure.
kickstart that live streaming career of yours. Get you doing some fun mentoring, especially at the start of the science fair season. I mean, it's a question we get all the time: is how do I choose what science fair project to pursue? Tough
Yeah.
question. I mean, if you want to answer it right now, go for it.
Um, well, I would say that one of my main things that I say to my students is don't just Google science fair projects.
Why not?
I do see that a lot. And if you want to learn something new, probably finding something that you already know exactly how it's going to go is not going to help you with that. And it's important to think about like your hobbies. I have a lot of kids who do sports related science fair projects because that's something that they're super, super passionate about. And then we do our best to make it like an original concept. And then I have other students who do these intense, like math and physics related questions or like almost philosophical questions. And they do studies on life on Mars and stuff like that, things that I know nothing about. And it's just super cool. You just find out what your passion is, something that you're really interested in, and then build off of that, right?
Are there other common challenges that you see science fair participants going through, especially if this process of like before you even get to the actual presenting your project at a science fair?
Yeah, I think a big part of it can sometimes be kids who go into a project and then they have no idea where to go after they get a question.
Mhm.
So helping people learn how to do an experiment and how to get replication, and how to control factors,
Mhm.
stuff like that is important. And I think if you haven't had any exposure to that stuff before, you're not going to know that on your own. So that's something that I have to work with people a lot on, especially controls, because sometimes if you're doing something in your house, which you don't exactly have access to a lab most of the time when you're like a grade 8 student. So helping them learn how to control elements, even like their cat jumping up and eating their plants or something. That has been a problem before. And when something unforeseen like that happens, helping them to, get back up and keep going.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that example sounds like it almost could have been from personal experience.
Yes.
Yeah, nice. Nice. Um, so then, okay, we've got a student who's got a fantastic science fair project. They get to a science fair. So either their local science fair, regionals, Canada-wide. What advice do you have for a student who would understandably be feeling nervous, especially before that first judging day? Do you have advice for them on how to just like settle the nerves and what they should expect?
So, and it's different for everyone. But what I used to do before I gave science fair presentations, is first of all, I would not have a script at all, because I've done that in the past. And then if I mess up my script, then I'm like, oh no, I've I've done it now. I'm not going to do well at this. And then that puts me in a bit of a panic. So I just don't have a script because I know what I'm doing. And I know everybody always says this, but you know your project best. So
Hopefully.
well, hopefully you did your own project and you know it best. Um, and Um, the judges will be able to see that. And knowing that about myself helped me have more confidence. And also, I think the night before, talking it through to anyone around you, or if you don't have anybody to give your presentation to, even the mirror, just being able to make sure you've got the pacing right, and to make sure that you feel very comfortable with the order you're going to say things in, and how you're going to say it.
Yeah, I like that. Um, Also, I think something that's super undervalued by students who don't know what they're doing, but overvalued by judges is the impact of storytelling. So if you're able to tell a good story and not just answer the question with like a very logical, like one sentence answer, but if you can actually tell a story about why this means something to you, why you decided to choose this science fair project, why the judge should care about it, why the general public should care about the results that you gotten, that already just like skyrockets you so far up the judging rubric. It's yeah.
Yeah. Someone who has judged before, that is, even if like it's a smaller question and you're able to add a bit of a story about something that happened during experimentation, that that makes it more personal, and it makes it more obvious that, you really did this, you really know about it, and you're remembering details because you had fun with it, you know?
Like tell the challenge of what you had to go through when your cat jumped up and ate your plant. Like tell
Exactly.
the story about how that affected you, like what emotions you went through. Tell the story about how you decided that okay, I just need to like redo this test again, and then I did it with better controls the next time. Like tell the story of how you progressed in your understanding and knowledge, not only about the science fair project itself, but also about the scientific method along the way.
Yeah, yeah, because the judge wants to connect with you,
Hmm.
right? They're not simply just judging your project. They're also having a conversation with you, so make it conversational.
Yeah, have a bit of fun. Do a laugh. Do not start off with a joke though. Risky opener.
Yeah.
Risky. Yeah. Um, Amazing. And um, once students get to science fair projects, what a common challenge I feel that a lot go through as well is having an expectation to have a certain result, to do a certain or like obtain a certain achievement. How do you go through about like preparing a student mentally for the challenge that is science fair project and understanding that everyone else around you is incredible. You are incredible for being there in the first place.
Yeah, that's something I know very personally, because I remember when I was in grade 7, Maria's first science fair project, and then I went to regionals, and I came fourth, so I was the runner-up, and I couldn't go to Canada wide, and um, at the time that really devastated me, because I had come in with this expectation that I was going to do well. Um, and I wasn't able to see that that is good. You're in grade 7 and you came fourth. That's a really big achievement. But I didn't really understand that until I had aged a few years. Um, but looking back, that was actually really important for me to go through, because I then built on that same project, and the next year I came back better for it. And I think even if you're not getting the results that you wanted, achievement wise, it's important to think about the fact that you did this research, and this research is important. Because if I hadn't done that grade 7 project, even if I was disappointed in the results, then I would never have had that data for my next project, and I never would have had the cool experiment that I did the next year. Because it's not about winning; it's about science.
Yeah. Especially once you leave school as well, like you don't just get awards for doing science. It just becomes your job, right? So
Yeah.
if you're only in it for the money or for the certificate or the photo holding, I don't know, the award or something at the end, you're probably not in it for the right reason. And it's probably not. You're going to go through many challenges in your life, and if not getting first place is one of those challenges, then hopefully you take that, you internalize that, you learn from that, and you come out a better person.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
exactly. Yeah.
Uh, so if Johan did say in the chat though, having a salary is kind of baller though, and yeah, that's true. Especially thinking as a high school student with no money. I mean, just imagining having a full-time salary and money to do things you want to do. Yeah.
That's why we go into agriculture, right?
To make money.
Yeah.
To have a salary. Yep. Super consistent income. That's it.
Yep.
Yep. Um, so if people aren't in it for the money, why should people be doing a STEM project?
It's super cool. I don't know. I don't know. Like, if you get it, you get it, I guess. If you've done science before, you understand how awesome it is. And if you haven't done science before, then you should try so that you can understand how awesome it is, right? I don't know. It's just, you feel like you're, making something that nobody else has really made before. Like in terms of research is just such a cool feeling. Being able to look at your results and say, like, this is significant information that could have an actual impact on whatever area I'm studying. That that feels awesome. Some of the things that I researched for my science fair projects, we've used many times on our farm, and those
Such
things are
as?
just awesome. So I
I wanted
did
to yell at your egg today, so I fed my chick brains. Yeah.
well that was more just about animal behavior. So it was more about breed selection, and it was cool to see how chickens learned and stuff. Um, but then I also did projects on cattle grazing. So I had them in a mob grazing setup. And I looked at their behavior over time, and which ones were grazing more, and then how much of the pasture they were eating, and how much selectivity they had in the pasture. And I use a lot of mob grazing when I manage our cattle now. And going into a pasture and knowing that, we've got a lot of weeds in here, this is something that we need a lot less selectivity of grazing, so we're going to mob graze it. Stuff like that. That was influenced by the research that I did in high school. And then in my grade 11 year, actually, this is actually the most relevant one. In my grade 11 year, I did research on parasitic nematodes, and using tannins extracted from local varieties of plants to kill them. And now we have a deworming pasture on our farm that has those varieties of plants in them, the ones that did best, that we run our sheep over to reduce their parasite load. And that's because, like, we know what varieties to use because I did that project in grade 11. So that's super cool.
That is super cool. Yeah, and you're right. That was the most relevant.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know why I didn't start with that.
I love that. I also just love, like, especially the passion where it's like, why should someone do a STEM project? Because it's cool. Like that. That's such a common response from people who get involved in science fair projects. Is that, like, yeah, you get it. If you get it, you get it. You join this awesome community of people that have the same passion for asking questions like why and how and staying curious. And I didn't get to do a science fair project in high school. Devastated. It wasn't a thing that Australians did in Australia, unless you went to like two random schools down in Sydney or something. But from my years being involved in Canada-wide, what I can tell you is that a lot of students at Canada-wide, they find school boring because it is. You're learning something you're forced to learn. Science fair projects gives you the opportunity to learn something that you want to learn about, and you learn about it in like a very holistic way. You're not just doing one subject for 1 hour on this day and this day. You're learning about physics and maths and biology and farming and all of these things all at once, and you can see how they're all related.
Yeah, yeah. That's something, especially coming from a really rural school where we did not have a lot of course options. You know, you could choose between two electives every year. And you had no opportunities for like AP or IB or anything. If you're a student who really wants to like extend what you're learning, science fair projects are sometimes your only option or one of your only options for that in STEM when you're from, a really small school like I was.
Mhm. For sure. Do you have advice on how people can connect with other students that are interested in this sort of thing, especially if you are from such a very small rural community. And yes, I'm 100% setting you up to say, how amazing is this Discord server?
Come join our Canadian STEM Youth Discord server.
Straight up self-promotion. I love it. Shameless. Absolutely shameless. Um, let's move away from specifically STEM a bit though. Do you have advice for high school students in general? How to make the most of their high school life? How to make the most of life outside of school?
Yeah, sure. When I was in high school, I got involved in everything. I think I played 6 sports. I was on the yearbook committee. I did volunteering and science fair and a bunch of other stuff. Because I just wanted to do everything. And a lot of people are not as social as I am, so they may struggle to do that many social things in a day. But even just joining one club, one sport, one thing that interests you, I think that's really important, because a lot of high school, it's not just about what you're learning. It's also about like, growing socially, and learning how to be in a club, have meetings, be able to strategize and cooperate as a team.
Learning how to like set a schedule, meet deadlines,
Yeah.
still make time for your friends, and still make time for the things you love while also having this thing that you have to do from
Yeah.
8:30 till 3 or whenever it is you go to school these days. Johan does have a question. Let's go back to STEM real quick. How does one go about finding a science fair project when they might not have a favorite subject?
Oh, that's interesting. So if there's nothing that has really interested you so far, in your classes, then there's definitely the possibility to look even around your community, see what sort of industry there is there, what sort of things that people are doing. I don't know, in my community, there's the estuary committee. And they do super cool stuff with biodiversity and stuff that, we didn't cover that in high school and subjects like that. But if I had looked out into what was happening in the community, I could have found them and maybe worked with them. But then if it's a thing of you can't choose your favorite subject, which I think is often quite common as well, then looking at what is available to you, and seeing if there's anybody that you can connect with, such as mentors in your area, that can also be a deciding factor as well.
Yeah, I love that. So yeah, two-part answer to a two-part question. But yeah, so the first part is you got to remember that STEM is everything. Like anything in the world can be boiled down to STEM. So do you have a favorite movie? Maybe something in that movie interests you. Maybe the movie itself interests you. Maybe you're interested in how that movie is made, and you can do a STEM project, learning about, I don't know, the way what does film look like compared to digital recordings. I don't know.
Yeah.
Dominic on one of the episodes of the Why to How podcast, if you look at our Youth Science Canada YouTube channel, he has a fantastic answer to this question where he goes into detail about how you can combine like two random things. Like he was really, really interested in magic, and so he did science fair projects on magic. And you just start combining like one passion and combining it with a scientific method, basically. So if you have something you're interested in, it doesn't have to be science, specifically science, like school subject related. Just start asking why and start asking how. Like, how does this work? Why do they do it this way? And then all of a sudden you've got yourself an answer and you've got yourself a hypothesis that you can start like researching, experimenting towards. And then from there, you just sort of like snowball into a bigger and bigger project, or you start to diversify. You find that one thing that you're slightly more interested in, and you can go down that pathway. But I absolutely loved your the second part of that answer, where if you have too many things and you can't decide between them all, you really have to look at what is most available to you. So if it's a mentor, if you're wanting to do a huge, big project on something random, like, I don't know, nuclear energy or something, like unlikely to build a nuclear reactor in your backyard, although a few people have done, which is, please don't do that.
There was one like that at my regional fair in grade 10.
Yeah. Like, do not try that at home. But do you have access to the resources you need to do the science fair project? It might be something you're super passionate about, but if you can't get access to those resources easily and you have another thing that you might be able to easily access, then perhaps you go with that one. But then Also, don't write it off just because you don't have access to it now. Put in some time and effort into trying to figure out if you can get access to those resources and then make the call. Oh, flip a coin. And as that coin's in the air, you're probably going to instinctually know which like answer you're wanting to come out on top. So maybe that's the way you do it. Ask a random stranger. Get mum to
Yeah.
tell you. I don't know. Um, Tatyanov, I don't know how to say that name, has a great question for you. How important do you think having leadership roles are in high school and beyond?
I think very important if you can take on a leadership role. I feel like if you're looking to learn a lot socially and about working with teams and stuff like that, it's definitely something that helped me a lot in high school. Um, I think sometimes people are more introverted and they don't feel as comfortable jumping into those roles, but having a leadership role doesn't always have to be like student council president. It can also be somebody behind the scenes making sure that everything's working properly. And I think there's a leadership role that any personality type could fit.
Leadership is so complicated. It's definitely not like having to be school captain or champion of the debating squad or I don't know, first chair in an orchestra. Is that a thing? Did I just make that up? I don't know.
I have no idea.
um, Leadership can come in the form of even just like being the one to support your friends when they're going through a tough time. There's lots of different leadership roles you can take. It doesn't have to be so formalized. I mean, school obviously pushes you hard into wanting you to desire more formalized leadership positions, especially in co-curriculum work. Um, Universities sometimes do prioritize that if it comes down to a application for that school, for example. But I think the most important thing is to realize is that don't let don't let your like preconceived ideas on what you think a leadership position should look like, or your preconceived ideas about your expectations, even about what university you must go to, and therefore you have to do all of this extra co-curricular activity so you have a better chance of getting in. I mean, 10 years later, realistically, your life could look completely different to what you thought it would look like as a 15, 16, 17-year-old. Life has a funny way of turning out for the best. So it's more important that you develop those leadership skills in whatever way that looks like, whether formally or informally, more so than it is to have something to put on a resume or an application or something longer term anyway. I mean, short term, it's it's hard to say no sometimes. I mean, I've definitely made a few decisions that I thought purely would look good on a resume, and that's why I did it. But looking back 10 years later, do I regret some of them? Absolutely. Should I definitely have gone on exchange instead of taking a leadership position at university? Yes, I should have. But these are the life lessons you learn as you get older. Great question. And sorry I butchered your name. Chantal has some wonderful advice about looking at news online for possible current day events that may be a source of inspiration for a project and are a good go-to when you're stuck. Johan, watching fantasy and sci-fi that eventually inspired the various projects, like testing if the catapults in Lord of the Rings are realistic.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I
I
love
love
that.
that.
Sci-fi has so many things that you could do science fair projects on because they sound like they could be real when you're reading the book or watching the movie, but then the actual physics behind so many of those things, you're like, oh, actually, hang on, 1 second.
Yeah.
Uh, like the best example is, I don't know if anyone's read The Three Body Problem, which is a book series by a Chinese author. Absolutely incredible, just like blew my mind. They start talking about like the fourth and fifth dimension or something, and like a very small part of you is like, I mean, like, is that real? Like, could that be real? And then you start going, and then you start researching, like, what does this actually look like? What does the fourth dimension actually look like? If we were in space, what would this look like? And then all of a sudden, you might have yourself a science lab project.
Yeah.
Highly recommend. Um, so, okay, on that topic, are there books, sources of media, anything that inspire you in your day-to-day life? Like, what's your go-to for your STEM passion?
Okay, this is maybe like a very old example, but although Leopold is one of my favorite authors, he does well, he wrote like a very long time ago about conservation of nature and stuff back when the conservation movement hadn't really started at all. So I find like it's kind of like uh colloquial, kind of an almanac. Actually, one of his works is called the Sand County Almanac. And I don't know, I think it's a really good thing to read just because it reminds you of why you're doing this, what we're trying to protect in you know environmental agriculture and in environmental sciences in general. Stuff like that. Just it reminds you of, I don't know, why we're doing this, and that there were people 100 years ago who thought we should be doing this, and it's cool that we're carrying on their journey.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have interest in rewilding projects? Is
Rewilding, yeah, that's I find rewilding projects interesting. I think it depends on the setting
Mhm.
that it's in. Because I think sometimes people think if I just stop mowing my lawn in general,
Yeah.
then there will be a forest there. Um, uh, and I think sometimes if we're looking at it from like a succession way and we're planning it based on what the natural species that would be there would be and stuff like that, then I think it's really interesting
Mhm.
and can be really productive. And then I think sometimes when it's just done for public image,
Yeah.
then it's not very productive at all. And there are either better ways we could be going about this or a better use for that land, even.
Say no to greenwashing. Big no. Big
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
But a book you might be interested in then is called Feral by George Monbiot. He's an incredible storyteller. He used to write, or still does, write, or used to write a daily column for The Guardian. I don't know if he still does, but he has a website where he does like weekly reflections on a whole bunch of different topics. He's like a thought leader now, but an incredible storyteller, and his book Feral is fantastic. Just like from a first
Cool.
person experience in seeing the effects that rewilding can have on the British landscape. It's not directly related to Canada, but on the British landscape, just gives you such a neat appreciation for what could be as opposed to what currently is.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Britain is definitely a place that could definitely use some
Yes.
rewilding.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Um, Anything else? What's your go-to uh, source of media that you're looking for? I know this is always something that's a challenge for just like filtering through the BS that happens in the world on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I think there's a really good documentary that came out on Netflix this summer, last summer, that it goes into regenerative agriculture and soil science in a really consumable way for like the average person who has no soil or farming background. And it's called Kiss the Ground.
Mhm.
Um, and it's really cool. I think that's a good documentary that I really enjoyed.
Nice. Okay,
Yeah.
we are almost at the hour mark. What a very quick interview this has been.
Yeah.
Um, do you have any final advice for students listening, for older people, our older listeners, some of us old,
Um,
real old?
I would say one piece of advice is go to a farmer's market if you can and talk to a farmer and learn a bit about what they're doing. Um, and if you're a student who's doing a science fair project, don't get discouraged if things fail miserably. My cows escaped on me about 30 times one summer, and I just carried on, and the project turned out okay.
I love that. Um, okay, just very quickly, what did you learn from that challenge? How did you address that?
Um, well, first of all, I learned that my watts in my fence were too low. Um,
Bump up the electric fence, love it.
um, but secondly, resilience was definitely an important skill that I was growing there.
Nice. I love that. Resilience, so important in life, and most definitely so important in science, especially if you get into research and experimentation, because things very rarely go right the first time around.
Yes.
Well, Maria, this has been a fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you, everyone in the chat. Um, Absolutely loved your participation, loved your questions, loved your advice, and loved your comments as we went through this interview. Um, Maria, good luck with your animal plant sciences degree. Good luck with figuring out a way to become a researcher and farmer in the near future. Thank you very much for mentoring high school students in science fair projects. We'll most certainly have you on again to do some sort of advice discussion. Everyone, you can catch Maria as an ambassador at the Canada-wide Science Fair this year. So, woo! Congratulations.
Yay.
Love having you around. Love seeing you participate again and staying involved. And for everyone else, we'll have a wonderful interview with you again. I want to say these will start happening weekly, but this is my Sunday, so we'll see. We'll figure it out. But anyway, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thanks everyone for joining. Catch you later. Bye.